The Kaaba housed 360 idols.
Muhammad was a man who claimed the legacy of Abraham and changed the history and geography of the Abrahamic faiths. While his religion is the youngest in that chain, his followers are the fastest growing on the globe.
He was a person that typified a lot of love, but he also displayed lots of knowledge.
With his message, he has created one of the most outstanding civilizations of the world. How did he manage to do that?
The Prophet had a policy of inclusion.
What was his mission?
He wanted the society to unite on morality and ethics.
How did he unite people around the primordial message of God?
He made peace between Jews and Christians.
He loved women for their strengths and their weaknesses.
He follows the directive of the Quran, that there is no compulsion in religion.
Have some tried to manipulate his message?
Some narrow-minded people, subhanAllah, sometimes, if I don't agree with you in something, then I have to have you as my enemy. No.
And what was his legacy?
Prophet Muhammad said, no. Al-yawm yawmul marhamah.
The Islamic message was not about tolerance, was deeper than that. It was about respect and knowledge.
Join me as I follow the footsteps of the Prophet in Muhammad, the messenger of mercy.
Muhammad, peace be on him, claimed to be the last in the chain of prophets sent to man by God. He was serious in his mission and relentless in his endeavor.
He was very demanding with himself and very soft with others, which is exactly the opposite of the way we sometimes are as Muslims. We are very soft and very gentle with ourselves and very strict with others.
If greatness of purpose, smallness of means, and astounding results are the three criteria of human genius, rarely anyone in history could be compared to Muhammad.
He was a person that typified a lot of love, but he also displayed lots of knowledge. In his personal relationships, he showed everyone respect.
Lost his father before birth and his mother at 6. He was brought up as an orphan. From a very young age, he was always concerned about the poor and needy, the widow and the orphan, the slave and the downtrodden.
He was a simple man, a poor man, a pauper, a man who was merciful, compassionate, one who cared and shared with people. He connected with people at the grassroots.
And for all his qualities, God chose him to bring his message to mankind.
The role of women before Islam was shocking, and he helped introduce a system where there was a very strong sense of equality for men and women, while acknowledging that we're quite different. He enforced the message that we are equal.
The message which was communicated before through Jesus, Moses, and Abraham. A message of harmony, morality, mercy, and compassion, but also a word of warning.
Kaaba, beside which the people of different tribes coming to Mecca for pilgrimage for the first time heard a strange message from a man called Muhammad, the Trusted. They heard for the first time about the unity of the deity, equality of mankind, rights of women, equality of black and white, these strange things which bewildered everyone coming here to listen to this message.
What centuries of polytheism, bloodshed, and exploitation of the weak made his mission seem impossible.
The Kaaba housed 360 idols when the Prophet, peace be on him, arrived in Mecca. 360 idols which symbolize 360 tribes, colors, theologies, and rivalries. It needed someone to come and purify the house. It needed someone to come and unify the people to worship one God.
The idea of one God and equality looked strange to ordinary people, and it was so dangerous for the elite that Muhammad's task turned out to be a struggle against the strong currents of the time.
Due to machinations of Abu Sufyan and his henchmen, over the period of 13 years in Mecca, the Prophet could attract only 300 followers, a number absolutely not comparable with those in Medina who converted to Islam without seeing the Prophet. The elite who had the power and might and money did not find that quite palatable to their taste. Among them, Abu Sufyan, who inflicted the Muslims, the followers of the Prophet, with all types of torture and sanction.
Despite the low number of followers due to suppressions and tortures, deep underneath, he moved the majority in their hearts and minds. Those who saw him were suddenly filled with reverence. Those who came near him loved him.
The Prophet had a policy of inclusion. The Prophet is described as Rahmatul lil Alameen. He is a mercy to all the worlds. So regardless of where a person reached on the scale of humanity and spirituality and development, the Prophet would meet them on their level.
The more the people were attracted to the Prophet, the more defiant the elite of Mecca, who were seeing their position endangered, became. Here in Dar al-Nadwa, a place of consultation and decision-making, the most vicious conspiracies were decided against the Prophet.
His followers were exposed to isolation, torture, and even death.
When the situation became intolerable for Muslims to remain in the early days on the Arabian Peninsula, he arranged for them to have safe passage to go to Africa, where he'd cut a deal that they would be protected and sheltered by, I believe, a Christian king, until it was safe for them to return.
Those who remained in Mecca were subject to extremely tough sanctions.
For 3 years, the Prophet, along with a small number of his followers, were surrounded in this small valley which belonged to Abu Talib, the loyal uncle of the Prophet.
The valley is now turned into a cemetery, but one day it marked the gloomiest days of the living.
During these 3 years, the toughest sanctions were made against them. No trade, no food, no relations. It was in this place and during this period that the Prophet, peace be on him, lost his uncle Abu Talib and his faithful wife Khadija. Probably this was the saddest period in the history of Islam.
It seemed his mission had failed, but in the center of their despair came hope. help came from a faraway city in the north.
Yathrib, a small city situated in the northern part of the peninsula, far away from Mecca. However, its people, who were comprised of two rival tribes, had heard the message of Islam, and they had converted to Islam almost entirely before the Prophet set foot in the city. And they were eagerly waiting for the Prophet to come here so that they have a chance to have a look at his face.
The Aus and the Khazraj were the sworn enemies of each other. They had already been fighting for almost 120 years. And the Jewish tribes residing in the area were allied with one or the other.
These two groups were making problem in Medina, and they were fighting each other many years.
It was anarchy in Medina. There were people who were waiting for opportunities to strike, to take over Medina.
It was during these hard times of animosity and bloodshed that the Prophet's message was heard by some round Kaaba during the Hajj season.
He would always be coming to the Kaaba and giving the message. And on one occasion, he encountered these people who later on became the Ansar. They were members of two tribes in Medina called the Aus and the Khazraj. And they had a specific problem of disunity in Medina.
The message spread in Yathrib quickly. His teachings resonated with people of both tribes. It seemed to be a cure for their century-long wounds. The Holy Quran gives specific references to what the two tribes heard about the message.
Do not kill a soul, for God has made life inviolable except with due cause. The best people in the eyes of God were those who lived humbly and did not retaliate against the ignorant. Be kind and forgiving toward others. Repel evil with goodness. In that way, your enemies will become your friends. The most important acts in the eyes of God are to free slaves, feed the hungry, and exhort one another to pity and mercy.
The Prophet's mercy and attitude towards non-Arabs and the poor in society appeared to be a cure for all their troubles.
We didn't send you other than to be mercy for all the worlds. He didn't say mercy for Muslims. He didn't say mercy for mu'mins. He didn't say even mercy for humans. He said mercy for all the worlds.
The two tribes were aware of a coming prophet from the knowledge they derived from the Torah of the Jewish tribes of Yathrib, and sent emissaries the following year to proclaim their faith. 1 year later, during a meeting in Aqaba in Mina outside Mecca, they invited the Prophet to migrate to their city where many had already accepted his message. He agreed, but only on certain conditions.
What he asked them to do in the first pledge of Aqaba was really the 10 Commandments, not to worship anything other than Allah, not to kill, not to steal, not to betray people, not to commit adultery, all these very basic commands of which ensure really the safety of other people.
Before accepting their protection, the Prophet stipulated certain conditions. They were told to live a moral life, abandon bloodshed, and live in peace. The tribes had to listen and obey him in all sets of circumstances and had to enjoin good and forbid evil.
So he started to look at solutions where he can go. And then the point was to find people who could get the message and at the same time protect the community.
Once the Aus and Khazraj accepted these conditions, the Prophet began to send his followers to Yathrib in small groups.
Muslims who migrated from Mecca to Medina were fleeing persecution, were fleeing from being tortured, killed, because of their faith. So they sought shelter and protection in Medina.
It's keeping the faith, keeping the spiritual community and protecting them from being destroyed at the beginning.
Prophet paved the way by speaking to the people of Medina, by sending ambassadors before, by developing a pact with the people of Medina. So it was not just a sudden immigration, it was a phased immigration.
After almost everyone had left safely, the Prophet stealthily moved out of Mecca. He left his cousin Ali behind, both as a cover and to safely move his womenfolk out of Mecca. He set out on his journey at night, accompanied by his companion Abu Bakr and a guide, leaving everything behind in his hometown.
In a very painful statement when he was leaving Mecca, he said, "O Mecca, you are the most loved piece of land to my heart. And if it wasn't that your people have removed me, I wouldn't leave you."
It took some 8 days for the Prophet to arrive near Yathrib, while under constant threat of attack by the Meccans. This journey, known as the Hijrah in Arabic, has become significant in the development of Islam, so much so that it became the start of the Islamic calendar.
The history has it that the Prophet, peace be on him, in his epoch-making migration to Medina, stopped over here in Quba for a week or two. It was only about 12 kilometers away, a couple of hours travel. However, the Prophet didn't go directly to Medina to put an end to the waiting of the new converts who were eagerly waiting for him, and instead sent Abu Bakr, his companion, to give the good news of his arrival in Quba. Why did the Prophet stay here in Quba for a week or two?
According to historians, by staying in Quba, the Prophet met several objectives. Firstly, he was able to wait for his loyal companion Ali to arrive to accompany him to Yathrib. Secondly, he discovered a willing audience who would absorb his message with his full spirit. And finally, he established and built the first mosque of Islam here over pillars of purity and sincerity.
In this place, he found a fertile land for his mission, as the Quran mentions it. First of all, he built a mosque, a place of worship, a temple, based on the pillars of taqwa and sincerity. And secondly, there were people in this place who were the true audience of his message, people who wanted to be purified. لمسجد أسس على التقوى من أول يوم أحق أن تقوم فيه فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المطهرين. This is a verse which is said to be about this mosque. As the Quran describes them, there are men here who love to be purified.
There is something about this mosque that one comes here, unlike other mosques. There is a peace here, and I think it is linked to the Quranic idea that this was built with true sincerity.
As the Prophet entered Yathrib, he was met with joy and celebration by his followers. But this was not the end of the trouble, rather the beginning.
When the Prophet, peace be on him, entered Medina, he was facing lots of problems. Medina was not a city free from troubles. Years of rivalry, grudge, and infighting had made Medina a city of ruins.
The Prophet was able to single-handedly wield warring tribes and Bedouins into a most powerful and civilized nation in less than a decade, a mission that initially seemed impossible. Upon his arrival in Medina, prominent figures of the city requested the honor of being his host. Instead, the Prophet chose to live with one of the poorest believers in the city.
The Prophet, peace be on him, was invited to live in the first floor of the two-story house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, a very frugal house, until the mosque was built and his rooms were ready for him to move in. The Prophet, peace be on him, accepted with open heart to live on one of the floors of his two-story house. The Prophet's actions were symbolic of his wider message, and the name Yathrib was changed to Madinatun Nabi, the city of the Prophet, in his honor. He built a simple mosque in Medina as a place of worship and a small home for him and his family to live in. The partially roofed mosque of the Prophet, thatched with simple straw, was not similar to the mosques that we know today. A very simple place, just for connection to God and for worshipping and dedicating one's soul to Him. To solve their rivalry, the Prophet suggested that he let his camel loose and build the mosque in the spot where the camel finally rests. And this was that place. The land belonged to two orphans.
The Prophet bought it from their guardians for a good price, and then erected a mosque in a couple of months, both to pray and to live in. But more important than the mosque was the message.
When he came to Medina, he changed people's mentality. For example, in one of the hadith it says, "Laysa shadidu bis-sar'a." He said, the most powerful person is not the one who overpowers others. A strong person is the one who controls his anger or her anger.
It was the message that changed the world.
After the arrival of the Prophet, peace be on him, this small city was turned into the epoch-making city of Islam, Madinatun Nabi, a city which made the history, a city which turned into the hub of Islam in the early days up to the 2nd century.
On his arrival, Medina was embroiled with huge social and political problems. Tribal issues had vexed the city for many years. The immigrant community who had recently fled to Medina from Mecca had to share the proceeds of the work of their hosts, causing great tension. Some of the highly regarded communities in Medina, particularly the Jews, had still not pledged allegiance to the Prophet. And upon all these were the hypocrites.
Number of individuals who profess to follow the Prophet, but in reality they're working to undermine it. They ally themselves with the Meccans.
So he took steps to safeguard his community from internal and external dangers. So the internal dangers were the ones who were the munafiqun, who were trying to destabilize from the inside.
Most of the time, the Prophet time is spent to defend the new state. And so the program of reforms that he eventually will implement are sort of contained by his commitment to defend from military and internal attacks.
He addresses the people with the most urgent things they needed: kindness.
Keep yourself from the punishment of God by doing good to each other, even if it is by half a date, and if you cannot find that, just by a good word.
He told them,
worship one God and love each other with the mercy of God.
It was this message and the skillful measures of the Prophet which saved Medina from its malice.
One of the reasons why the Prophet was actually brought to Medina was to try and find some kind of solution to an ongoing conflict which was going on in Medina among the very ancient tribes of Medina. The Aus, the Bani Aus and the Khazraj were fighting for centuries. They've been fighting against each other, and so it was consumed. The city was consumed by this internal fighting. One of the invitations that the Prophet received is to try kind of settle down and try to mediate.
The task of the Prophet in leading such a society peacefully and united was a demanding mission in itself. To remove all grudges between the immigrants and the host community, the Muhajirun and the Ansar, the Prophet initiated the pact of brotherhood among individuals of each community.
Now we are speaking about integration. Integration is not going to happen unless people, they live together. So instead of segregation, Rasulullah ﷺ said not only integration, but brotherhood. With brotherhood means comes love, comes respect, understanding each other's culture.
The Muhajiruns, the immigrants who come from Mecca with the Prophet, have left everything behind.
They left all their belongings and came with only what they could carry on a camel or what they could carry on a horse, if they had one.
So the Prophet devises a very sort of clever instrument by joining them financially to each other. And so each one of them selects a brother. The Prophet assigns one of the Ansar becomes a brother of one of the Muhajirun.
It reached to the point that there was, it is narrated in Holy Quran, it says, وَالَّذِينَ تَبَوَّأُوا الدَّارَ وَالْإِيمَانَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ. It means the people who lived in Medina. يُحِبُّونَ مَنْ هَاجَرَ إِلَيْهِمْ. The people who live Medina love the migrants from the Mecca. How much they loved, and they prefer them to themselves. So if they have anything, they try to divide it into two parts and give them to the immigrants.
Al-Mu'akha, as we call it, this pledge of brotherhood, is based on many levels. The first one is the people who left Mecca, Al-Muhajirun, the people who are leaving their city and their life in the name of their faith, were coming and welcomed by people who were now new Muslims and Ansar.
This pact went as far as making the two inherit from each other, a law which was initially endorsed by the Quran until the two communities were joined into one and a new ruling was enforced.
The second level of this was about, it's not only about who we are, but what we have. And then Mu'akha was sharing what the people of Ansar had with what the people of Al-Muhajirin was coming without having anything. So the point was sharing.
Yeah, it is very important to speak about the Ansar, the people of Medina. Not only they have accepted Rasulullah ﷺ and the Muslims, but also, subhanAllah, they have shared with them everything they have got.
Anyone who comes from Mecca to Medina who would come completely destitute with no wealth, nothing, would be given wealth, property, help and support, even startup loans and opportunities for them to start a good business. And they did. And they did a brilliant job. So that brotherhood, pact of brotherhood, created an environment of togetherness.
To solve the tribal grudges among the people of Medina, who had been acting vengefully towards one another, the Prophet cancelled all compensation for the blood spilt in the time of the Jahiliyyah. By this measure, he put an end to the vicious circle of bloodshed among tribes and sub-tribes.
He came in a situation where, culturally speaking, politically speaking, ideologically speaking, there were disputes and conflicts between tribes. Al-Aws wal Khazraj were known as being always fighting against one another for different reasons, for power, for money, for prestige. And he came by saying, what is binding, what is important is your faith, and you belong now not to your tribes, you belong to your principles.
He wanted the society to unite on morality and ethics. He wanted people to know that their destiny is the same. If they want to live on this earth, they need to have an earth that is harmonious.
It's an intellectual revolution, a spiritual revolution, and a social revolution in the way the people who are dealing with other tribes and understanding the best among you is not because he or she belongs to one tribe or to one social class, is because of his or her piety and her God consciousness. And this is something which is a complete change in their perception of life.
To bring a comprehensive solution to the mosaic society of Medina, the Prophet introduced the historical pact of Medina.
On a broader aspect, the covenant that was made between the tribes and with the Jewish tribes as well, particularly the Banu Qurayza and the Banu Nadir, meant that the feuds which had been going on before the arrival of the Prophet really were put to a stop.
He made peace between Jews and Christians. He made peace between Muslims and Christians, even, and between Muslims and Jews.
This pact still stands out as a prominent historical document in social leadership.
It follows the directive of the Quran, that there is no compulsion in religion, and so we see the community are left to, churches are protected, places of worship of the Christians are protected, and the Jews likewise. And so it's a very tolerant community.
We accept you as you are. You accept us as we are, and we have to live together. And in order to live together, we have to have a written agreement.
People of Medina, of all backgrounds, Muslims, Jews, Christians, people who had other religion or no religion for that matter, were all brought together as citizens of a state.
He established the first written constitution in the world, in which it took into consideration all the entities in Medina.
The constitution simply said anyone who subscribes to this living together of various people would subscribe to the following conditions: that we will live in peace, we'll protect one another, we'll stand for each other's right to faith, life, property. These are remarkable statements for a prophet who spoke all on these issues 1400 years ago.
The basic principles of the pact aimed at ensuring that all parties in Medina were maintaining the essence of what it stood for: justice, tolerance, and morality.
This document was based in two things. One is justice. And for us as Muslims, we believe that one of the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Adl, the absolute just. And the second is mercy, because justice by itself is not enough. Sometimes it might be a painful process to implement justice, but justice has to be combined with mercy.
He was following the very essence of the Islamic message. The Islamic message was about respect and knowledge. And this is why, for example, we have from the reading, if God had will, He would have made you one community. So by definition, God's will was about diversity, was about you dealing with Jews and Christians and people of other faiths. And then you have to respect this, because by respecting them, you respect the will of God.
The Prophet never had the harsh approach that many people are having today under the guise of Islam. This approach of harshness, whereby you have to kill someone because you disagree with what they believe.
The treaty emphasized religious freedoms, security of the community, and the role of Medina as a sacred place, barring all violence and weapons. It also emphasized the security of women, stable tribal relations within Medina, a tax system for supporting the community in a time of conflict, a system for granting protection of individuals, and a judicial system for resolving disputes.
No one has right to refuse other mankind, whether he is Christian, he is Jewish, or another type of faith. The society based on the justice, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said and ordered His prophets, you have to make justice between people. أقل أمر ربي بالقسط. My God ordered me to be just.
He helped introduce a system where there was a very strong sense of equality for men and women, while acknowledging that we're quite different. He enforced the message.
The Prophet could afford all these because his mission was a mission to help, to guide, and to enlighten. It was a mission which was only possible through mercy, tolerance, and inclusion. The model of the Prophet's leadership in Medina is the example of a leader who was always concerned with the united voice of his people, a man who preferred mercy over revenge, forbearance over rage, and unity over disunity. The Prophet led Medina with these principles for a decade, and it looked as though Islam had been contained in the region around Medina. But a mistake by the elite of Mecca attacking the new society of Muslims consequently leads to the Muslims' conquest of Mecca in defense. This event changed the course of history forever.
They've tortured him, his family, and his companions. They have used economic sanction against Bani Hashim, the 3 years of Sha'b. And even when he went to Medina, they didn't leave him alone. They were fighting against him. They have done everything bad. They have abused Rasulullah ﷺ verbally and physically. They have done everything. And yet, after 10 years, when he came back to Mecca, he didn't enter it as a victorious commander.
Al-Yawm Yawmul Marhama. Today is the day of mercy. This was the message brought from Medina to Mecca by the prophets. All indoors are safe. All in Abu Sufyan's house are safe. Nothing to be destroyed, no plan to be plucked out. This was the message of mercy and peace which attracted even the enemies of the Prophet to him. And this is why we see today the people in their hundreds of thousands go around this house in peace of heart, peace of mind, and peace of spirit.
The conquest of Mecca stands out in history as an example of selfless leadership and concern for all human beings, whether ally or foe.
He faced Quraysh and he said, Ya Quraysh, what do you think I'm going to do with you? As if he's reminded them by what they have done. They have killed his family. They have killed Hamza. What they have done to him. They said, what do you think I'm going to do with you? So they said, you are the most honored person. We don't expect anything other than good. So he said, اذهبوا فأنتم الطلقاء. Go, you are absolutely free. He didn't punish them. He didn't imprison them. Even he didn't do like a revolutionary courts.
Now they are getting to their houses, their families as well. So they try to show we are winners. But here, Prophet Muhammad said, no. Al-Yawm Yawmul Marhama. Today is the day of mercy.
Not only did he forgive ordinary warriors of Mecca and those who had tormented him and tortured his companions, he also forgave those who had committed the most despicable war crimes against his closest relatives during the Battle of Uhud in Medina.
These mountains behind us are the mountains of Uhud, in which the most tragic event in Islam took place.
It was here that Wahshi, the servant of Hind, the wife of the governor of Mecca, Abu Sufyan, killed Hamza, the uncle of the Prophet, and cut his chest open for Hind to chew his liver.
He showed incredible forbearance, and then look how he treated Abu Sufyan, you know, who for so long had sought to kill him and to defeat the Muslims any way, which way but loose. And yet when he accepted Islam really out of necessity, and you could say probably in order to preserve his life, immediately the Prophet accorded him respect and said, anyone who goes to the house of Abu Sufyan has my protection. So he didn't belittle him, he ennobled him. And the only condition that he made was he said, I don't want to see your wife, because she had Hamza killed. and chewed up his liver, you know. So he said, I don't want to see your wife.
In the Battle of Uhud, when he saw his uncle, his loving uncle, Sayyidi Hamza, radiyallahu anhu, not only he was killed, but after his killing, Hind, she came with her knife and she opened his stomach and she wanted to eat his liver. So when he saw this, Sayyidi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was so sad. And yet, said, "Oh Allah, guide my people. Indeed, they don't know what is the truth."
When the Prophet, peace be on him, conquered Mecca, Wahshi came to ask for forgiveness, and Prophet did forgive him. And this is amazing, the amount of pressure, the amount of hardship and grief that this incident brought to the Prophet, and on the other side, the amount of mercy, the extent of forgiveness that he had to forgive the person who had killed Hamza, his uncle, is remarkable. In this example, the Prophet showed that he aimed to bring everyone to the folds of guidance and welfare rather than seek revenge.
His position with the enemies and his position with people was always based on mercy and forgiveness.
As a human being, he used the power of forgiveness. He used the power of mercy. He used the power to unite the community instead of causing a bloodbath.
If this is our blueprint, if the Prophet behaviors are our example to follow, then many of us, many Muslim community nowadays will fail miserably in the way they are keen to exclude and to ostracize people of who slightly differently think, slightly different from them.
This busy area that you see in the background is Hujun, a neighborhood very close to Kaaba and Masjid al-Haram. And here on this side, we have Shi'bu Abi Talib, in which the Prophet, peace be on him, along with a small number of his followers, were surrounded and seized for 3 years. Despite this bitter experience and the harsh treatments, when the Prophet returned to Mecca after the conquest in victory, and many of the old enemies had turned into new followers, the Prophet, peace be on him, never made any mention of these years and never tried to retaliate anyone for what they had perpetrated against him and his followers. It was with such character and such teachings that the Prophet managed to create a coherent community, an ummah. It was with the help of this unity, together with his message, that he succeeded to fend off the enemies from around the peninsula and conquer the hearts and minds of other nations. It was therefore natural that the Prophet saw division and deviation as a main concern towards the end of his life. But is the Prophet's message of mercy and unity withered like this tree, broken like this twig? Do we Muslims still have that message cherished and nurtured in our hearts? Some people are quite disappointed by seeing the situation nowadays going around the world of Muslims, where they fight each other, they kill each other, they slander against each other, they cannot tolerate each other. This is certainly not what the Prophet, peace be on him, wanted about his ummah.
Allah's help and support is when the ummah is united. And it is some narrow-minded people, subhanAllah, sometimes, if I don't agree with you in something, then I have to have you as my enemy. No. This is absolutely wrong. That's why we've got all this school of thoughts. Why do we have them? Because it is a difference of understanding.
Rasulullah is our spiritual father, both of us. And, you know, when you have a father and he watches two sons fight, The sons should give up their fight because of their love for the father. And there is no doubt that we have that love. So we need to breathe that fire alive again.
So is it right to say that dissension, division, and disunity are therefore not the inevitable destiny of the Ummah?
If we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, facing the same Qibla, praying toward the Kaaba, our Lord is one, our Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is one, and he is our example, salawatu rabbi wa salamuhu alayhi wa ala alih. So subhanallah, we have to come to terms that what unites us is more.
Millions and millions of people every year coming here to seek the blessings of this mosque and to find peace and tranquility among different races, different colors, different cultures, all as one, all worshipping one God and following one prophet.
When we say one ummah, it doesn't mean one language. It doesn't mean one color. It doesn't mean one understanding.
In his farewell sermon, the Prophet emphasized on qualities that could keep the Ummah together. He stressed upon love, mercy, unity, and individual and social rights.
This deen is based on love. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith, you cannot enter Jannah unless you believe. And you cannot be believers unless you love each other.
It was this theme of love and peace that was continuously highlighted by the prophets.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what wants from us is to love each other, to care about each other, to be an ummah.
So what did the Prophet mention in his final sermon that could sum up his 23 years of hard mission?
This gigantic mosque is built on the thresholds of Arafat, where the Prophet, peace be on him, delivered his farewell sermon. A sermon in which he advised his followers to high human values.
O people, listen to my words, for I do not know whether I will be amongst you for another year. Just as you regard this month, this day, and this city as sacred, so regard the lives and property of all amongst you as sacred and inviolable.
And it was just reminding people of all the lessons learnt and of all the points that he'd emphasized about behavior towards people. But they all echo the original pledges of Aqaba. They all echo honoring people, not exploiting them. Not killing them, not harming them.
Then he added things about the way we have to be with ourselves, with our wives, with our husbands, within the family, with nature, with others, and to be clear in the way that we are following the path.
O people, it is true that you have certain rights with regards to your wives, but they also have certain rights upon you. Treat them in kindness and love, for you have taken them in trust, and they are your partners and committed helpers.
What really stood out was that he loved women for their strengths and their weaknesses, and he wasn't threatened at all by them. In fact, I think he would empower and encourage women.
Know that every Muslim is a brother to every Muslim, and that the Muslims constitute one brotherhood.
He foretold the creation of a society based on certain principles.
These are the three things that he warned us about. Tribalism. He says the Arab is not superior to the non-Arab and vice versa. Racism. He said the black is not superior to the white, nor the white superior to the black. Okay? And sexism. How he warned us about being just to our women.
He destroyed any prejudice, any room for racism, any sort of discrimination in the society based on nationality, color, or gender.
The closer you are to God, the more you deserve status.
Remember that you will indeed meet your Lord, and He will indeed requite your deeds. You should not inflict nor suffer any oppression, injustice, or inequity. Behave the way you like people behave. These were the last pieces of advice given by the Prophet to his followers, an incident which marks this place as a historical site forever.
Should the legacy of Prophet Muhammad be sought in numbers and powers, or it should be sought in the values he tried to promote?
The Prophet came to a society that was harsh, that was barbaric, and that had no law, no civilization. And over a period of 23 years, he was able to bring about a process of total change. What was the methodology? What was the techniques? What was it that he did in order to bring about this change?
The point is that we have to be very cautious not to be happy with numbers and figures. We need to be happy with behavior and quality.
He encouraged a culture of sharing and caring. He encouraged a culture away from greed and selfishness, away from the concept of bonus and bonus and bonus. No, he wanted people to know that selflessness is more loved by God. Charity is more loved by God.
People today talk about sunnah and they think, well, sunnah is keep your pants above your high up or wear a turban. The Prophet's sunnah, the most important dimension of his sunnah is what he did to bring about social transformations.
The best among you is the best for human beings. So the way you have to deal is serving humanity, serving God, and serving God is shown by the way you serve humanity. This is the legacy. This is huge. This is the very essence of the Islamic message.
The Prophet died 23 years after the first revelation.
The Prophet is now buried in a place where he used to live, in very frugal chambers which were built around the mosque.
But his legacy of mercy, love, tolerance, and unity lives on. His blessings are still felt by the hearts who have trusted him and by the souls who have found barakah in his message.
The beauty of this massive pilgrimage is the feeling of fraternity and brotherhood, tolerance that exists among everyone, all followers of Muhammad, peace be on him. What Muhammad, peace be on him, had intended for his nation is manifest here in this big occasion.
A legacy that is practiced every year during the annual Islamic Hajj pilgrimage, a reminder of the very message that Muhammad left to his followers.
The Quran mentions that the house of God is full of barakah, full of blessing. And one very visual and manifest aspect of that barakah are these people that you see coming from many different nations, different colors, different races, different countries, going round together, praying together, worshiping together, symbolizing the barakah of unity.
The last words of Prophet Muhammad's farewell sermon still reverberates in our ears.
Pass on my words to others, and those to others again, and may they understand my words better than those who listen to me directly. God is my witness that I have conveyed to you his message.
His message is heard by billions around the world and has spread far and wide in every direction. God is greater than to be described, has become the emblem of his faith. The contents of his book have gifted peace to many hearts and harmony to many souls. and it continues to inspire not just Muslims, but all who believe in morality, equality, tolerance, and justice for all humankind.
And now, 14 centuries after his demise, we do testify that he did pass on the message. Wassalam.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد